everyone, it's Kristie here from KP Creatives with another video for Two Scrapbook Friends. Today we are going to be using some acetate and watercolor paper, and we're going to be doing some fun ink smooshing techniques. I've got a technique that is going to give you two card backgrounds as we work on today's project. The inks I'm going to be using today are Pinkfresh Studio inks. I keep mine in one of the Tim Holtz ink cube containers. They fit perfectly. You get 12 in one of these containers. Now, what I love about the Pinkfresh Studio inks is the minis are sold in these color families. So you can see I've got 3 color families here. What I really like is it's really easy to pick inks that go together that are the same tone. And you can do that by picking the first, which is what I've done in this case, or the second, third, fourth in each of the color families. Because they have the same tone or same depth of color as each other, they go really well together. So it's really great if you're looking to combine colors together, to work on ink blending, or just coordinate some colors on your card. Pinkfresh makes it really easy. They are coming out with some new colors soon, and I cannot wait to see what the new palette looks like. So I think we are going to see that later on this summer, so that'll be great. So I'm going to use from the Pinkfresh Studio collection, Tidal Pond, Storm, and Stargazer. So again, that's the first color in each of those different color families. I'm then going to be pairing that with a simple sentiment from Tailored Expressions. I've got several of them stamped out in one of these great containers from Tailored that holds the Simple Strips collection, and I'm going to be using Sending a Big Hug and Pop Fizz Clink Cheers. The cards I'm going to be making today are for Father's Day, so I thought either of those sentiments work for the dads that I'll be sending these to. So I'm going to set the sentiments. Actually, I'm going to send them right off to the side because with ink smooshing, things can get a little messy. So I'm going to put these over to the side where they will be safe from ink and paint. I will be using some of the Winsor & Newton white ink to splatter on the end or at the end of the creation of our backgrounds, and I'll be using a fan brush and an acrylic block to do that. So with the ink smooshing, I've got a piece of Tim Holtz watercolor paper. I really like the Tim Holtz watercolor paper, but any you have in your collection will do. The Tim Holtz watercolor paper is a nice bright white. It also has a smooth side and a textured side. I'm going to be using the smooth side. That's really personal preference. You can use textured watercolor paper. It does not matter for this technique. And I've got it cut at 4.5 by 6 inches. And that is because the stencil that I'm using from My Favorite Things, it's their rectangle masking stencil, is 4.5 by 6. So I wanted them to match. I'm going to be using the outline of the rectangle today. So I've just got that hinged with some pink pixie tape up at the top. I did want to show you that it does come with the mask for the center of the rectangle. We're not going to be using that today, but these stencils are so great to have in your collection. I know there's other videos on the Two Scrapbook Friends channel using these, and they're really great to have as staples for so many different things in your collection. So let's get to the smooshing. I've got this Tidal Pond ink. I'm literally taking the top off my ink cubes and smooshing it down onto my media mat. Now, if you don't have a media mat, any slick surface will do. So if you have a craft sheet, that will work. So even some packaging, if you have like acetate type material from craft packaging, that'll work too. So we've got Tidal Pond, Storm. Now we're going to get some Stargazer down on our mat. And there's no rhyme or reason to this, just smushing down the color. Then what you want to do is bring in a spray bottle. I've got the Tim Holtz Distress Sprayer. It's great. Have had it for years. Never had a problem. So I am literally just going to spray these colors. And you can see they're moving around, getting, now they're basically ready for us to use like watercolor. Now I'm bringing in a piece of acetate. You can use anything for this. It doesn't have to be thick acetate. It can be, like I said before, from packaging, from your craft supplies. anything will work here. And there is really no method to the madness. I'm going to take the acetate, I'm gonna smush it down, make sure we've got some color on it, and then we're gonna apply it directly to the paper. And this is gonna give us, you know, some splatters. What you get is what you get. You know, I think I might have shared this before, and if you watch Tim Holt's videos, you definitely would have heard him say that. He says when you're working with techniques like this, you know, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. So we are just, you know, kind of globbing the paper, the inks onto the paper. I like to kind of roll the acetate on and then roll it on to the paper. Some of it is going to bleed through the edges of that stencil. If that bothers you, you probably want to tape these off. It doesn't bother me. I just want kind of a center focal point in the card. So it's okay that it's not totally perfect on the edges for me. Now, one thing I will tell you, you don't want to go in right with the edge to your paper. I'm not touching my paper, but you don't want to do that because you are going to get a harsh line. So that's why I like to curve the paper either this way or this way, because I find it gives me not a rough edge when I'm applying it right to my paper. So you can see here, we're just creating this abstract pattern. And because we've got that stencil there, it's going to look pretty cool that we've got a border-ish. Like I said, there will be some that leaks through, and that's okay, onto our paper. So I'm going to stop there. I am not going to clean this up yet, but I will clean off the acetate just with a baby wipe. So we've got the acetate clear, and we'll reuse that for another card project. So you can get multiple uses out of this, right? You don't have to, you just keep this handy for this type of technique. Now I'm going to take a paper towel and I'm just going to lay it over top here so I can pick up that excess ink off of the stencil. And we'll properly clean the stencil later, but I just want to get that excess ink picked up. Okay, now I'm going to set this one aside to dry a little bit. We're going to work on the second background. So you see all of this lovely ink that's mixing together. I'm going to spritz it again with water, get it moving around a little, and I'm going to take my watercolor paper. Smooth side is facing my mat. So this is the rough side, smooth side down. And I am just going to play and pounce this into the color so that we are going to get a really cool watercolor wash on the back, or on the front, it will be the front of this paper. So you just kind of, you know, smush it around, check on it a little bit, make sure you've got it covered. It's best if you don't have an idea of what you want this to look like, because it's gonna look different every time. So it's kind of fun to play around, get a little inky. You can see this is, we're getting some cool lines, and you can wiggle your paper around. I really love this soft watercolor wash technique. I think it's really cool, and you get it just by, you know, mopping up the color that you used. Now, I have quite a bit of color left on this mat, so I think I will actually bring in another piece of watercolor paper because I don't want that ink to go to waste. So I hadn't planned on this, but I'm going to use a third piece here. Smush this down, and we've still got quite a bit of color, so let's keep mopping this up here. So see, you can get multiple card backgrounds out of just smushing down your ink cubes a few times and spritzing them with water. Now this time I'm really pressing down onto my sheet so I get all of that water picked up, get that ink picked up. Let's make sure we've got some really good coverage here. And I think that looks great. So this would be great for a sky background. You could put some trees down at the bottom. Well, you could do anything you want. But I just wanted to show you the ability to get multiple backgrounds out of ink smooshing. Now I'm going to bring in just a baby wipe, clean things up, and there we go. So now we are going to set the panels off to dry. I'm going to bring back the first one we worked on with this stencil. Now I want to have some white splatter on this background. So I'm going to bring in the Winsor & Newton white. I've got an acrylic block here, and I'm just going to put a little bit of this paint onto the acrylic block. Just wiping off the top with a baby wipe so that it doesn't get, sticky and caked in there. Now I'm going to bring in a fan brush. I really love to use a fan brush when I'm doing any splatter. So I'm going to get a little bit of paint on here, and I'm just going to flick onto the background, and hopefully you can see some of the white splatter going onto the card. So I'm just flicking this around, making sure I'm getting some white splatter over the background here. And that looks great. So I'm going to move this one off to the side, and we're going to bring in one of the backgrounds. Now these aren't fully dry yet, and that's okay. I just want to start getting some of the white splatter on, and then we'll move forward with putting the rest of the cards together. But you can see just by tapping the fan brush, you get a really nice spray of the white paint. Now these Winsor & Newton paints, they come in a set of 4. They come with black, gold, silver, and white. And you don't need a lot, right? Like you're using a really little bit of this paint at one time. So we're covering 3 full backgrounds here, and we just used a little tiny bit of the paint. So you can really get a lot of mileage out of these. So there we go. I think that looks great. Perfect for, if we had that a little darker, I would say that would be perfect night sky background. I guess these could be twilight skies, just when the stars start to come out. So here we go with our third one. And you can see that it's standard, right? I just tap my fan brush in and then give it a little tap as we get the splatter all around our card background. And I'm getting splatter all over my mat. That's okay. It's a media mat. It's meant to get messy. We're supposed to be using our tools, not letting them just sit in our craft spaces and look pretty. So it is okay that it's getting a little messy. Okay, I think that looks great. So we've got some great white splatter coverage there. So now I'm going to bring in the baby wipe that we've been using for cleanup here, because we've got cleanup in aisle 1 of the craft room. So let's get this. We don't want to let it sit, or else I'm going to have to scrape it off the mat, which is possible. It's not a big deal, but it definitely is easier just to wipe this off as soon as you do it. So you can see there, it comes off really easy, and it comes off just as easy on your acrylic block. So if you leave it longer, obviously you would need some hot water, and like I said, you probably have to scrape a little bit, but if you catch it when it's wet, totally fine. And I'll make sure I set my brush aside for cleaning later. Okay, so now we have 3 backgrounds. I'm gonna do, this is not the most thrilling peel and reveal because you know it's gonna look like a rectangle, but isn't that cool that you get the focal point of the watercolor smooshing that we did? I think that's really fun and looks pretty cool as a card background. So I am going to pause the video for a moment. What I'm going to do off camera is cut down these panels so that they will fit on a standard A2 size card. So standard A2 size card, we have 4¼ across by 5½ inches tall. So all you do is take a piece of 8½ by 11 paper, cut it down the middle at 4¼ score at 5½. And you can see I've got my handmade stamp on the back already, so these cards will be good to go. All right, so I'm gonna go off camera, cut these panels down, and then we will get to putting the cards together. Be back in a moment. Okay, so now we're back. I've got the panels cut out, our sentiments are ready, and because I cut the panels down smaller than our card front, I've got some extra pieces of the watercolor splatter, and we're going to glue those to the inside of our card just to create a little bit of interest. So for these two panels, I cut them down to 3¾ inches by 5. They're both the same. That's going to give us a nice border around our card. And then for the little one, I've cut that at 2¾ by 4, just so that that's going to stand out a little bit more on our card front. I think that will look great, give it a little bit of dimension. So let's bring in some of our foam tape, and we're gonna get the panels with foam tape on them so that there will be a little bit of dimension on our card. So we'll get that rolling. Make sure that these have really a good amount of adhesive on the back, because we want them to hold up really nice in the mail. I'll be mailing these cards, but even if you're not mailing, it's really nice. It gives them a really sturdy base and they will not warp. And you can see with the watercolor paper, we did get some warping as we were working on it, but as these panels dry, and especially with these good layers of foam tape and some strong adhesive, they're going to be really nice and flat on our finished project. Now, if you didn't have the Winsor & Newton white splatter, you could use, if you have any type of white pigment ink, so if you have the Hero Arts Unicorn ink, that's my favorite white pigment ink. You can get, I think Gina K has one. I think most of the ink companies have one. And you could do the exact same thing with the smooshing and splatter the white pigment ink on your project. So that would work as well. Just scissors getting a little sticky with that foam tape, so I'm going to make sure I get those cleaned off there. Okay, so now we're going to take the release paper off of the tape, and if you're new here, you'll see that now I'm going to bring in my liquid glue. This is the Gina K Connect liquid glue in one of the precision tip bottles, and I really like to put a layer of the glue on top of the foam tape. And you might think, excuse me, isn't the tape sticky? And yes, the tape is sticky. However, if you need any wiggle room, if you need to move your panel around on your card to get it straight, this layer of liquid glue creates a little hydroplane and it gives you that wiggle room. And I always like to find my wiggle room, and this really helps. So I highly recommend, if getting things straight is something that, you know, you kind of takes you a little bit to get used to on your cards, then try this trick, because it really does work and it makes a difference. And it's one of the reasons why I love working with liquid glue. Okay, so now I'm going to bring in one of our card bases, bring in my handy T-ruler, and this is going to help us get this nice and straight. So I'm going to put it down first. We're going to get a lovely 1/4 inch margin. And let's bring in the T-ruler, make sure it's sticking just a little bit. There we go. Getting that at a 1/4 inch. And that is going to look great. So I didn't get that quite straight. I'm actually going to end up cutting a piece of that off just so that we get that nice and straight. The T-ruler, because I was right at the edge here, it didn't work as well. And what I should have done, as I normally do on these videos, is bring in my secret weapon ruler, and I did not do that. So I will come back off camera and cut a little slice of that off so it looks like a nice even margin. So now let's do a second one the proper way. So you can always learn what not to do in these videos as much as you learn some new things. Hopefully. Okay, so now I've got the secret weapon ruler in. I'm quarter of an inch in from the left, which is going to give us 1/4 of an inch on all sides. And look at that. That worked a lot better. Okay, great. Now we're going to bring in our third panel, and I'm going to have to fiddle with this one a bit because I'm not sure exactly the margin we're going to get here. That looks like about 3/4 of an inch on each side. Let's see here. Yeah, 3/4 is looking between 3/4 and 1/2. I think we're 3/4 on the sides and 1/2 an inch top and bottom. That looks good. And we're going to press that down. Looks great. So while we've got our glue out, I'm going to put some liquid glue on the back of each of these little strips that we cut from our watercolor panels. And I'm going to adhere them right to the bottom, flush with the edges of the card base on the inside of the card. So I think that just adds, you know, a little something of interest to the card project. So I'm going to do that to each of them. And I will do it actually to the other one that, even though I know we're cutting it down, I will do it now so that it cuts everything flush. Now this time I'm just inking it right, or putting the glue right on the bottom of the card base just to show you either works. Either method is going to get you the same result. So again, just adds, you know, a little something. I don't know about you, but I often just put a single stamp and then write my message on my card. So this adds, you know, a little something different for the recipient. And we'll get our last one adhered here. That's nice and flush with the bottom. Okay. So I'm going to take this one off camera. I'm going to cut the edge just about 1/8 of an inch to get that even, and I'll meet you back here to put the sentiments on. Okay, so here we are back. I cut just 1/8 of an inch strip off of this card, and now it looks like it's even and nobody will ever know the difference. So now we get to choose our sentiments. I think I'm going to go with the Pop Fizz Clink Cheers on this one, and I'm just going to cut one of the banners off so we can have this flush with the edge of the card front. So we've got some liquid adhesive down there. And I also like doing that cut because it really allows you to get the sentiment straight because you're lining it up right with the edge, which is easy. Okay, there we go. Now we'll try sending a big hug, and I'm going to do the same thing. Cut off that edge, add our adhesive. And I really like to anchor things kind of on the bottom third. I think it just adds a little bit. Oh, you know what? I need to cut that a little bit more. Really close to the G, because this one has a smaller panel. Now, it's okay that I already got the glue on there. This liquid glue dries clear, so no one will ever see it, but I'm able to put the sentiment right on top of where I was before. So sending you a big hug. Great. And I'm going to get the sending a big hug again. Chop off that one banner. Let's get some adhesive down and adhere this. Now, because these cards are going to some of the dudes, I'm going to go easy on the bling because a couple of the guys that are getting these cards aren't really blingy types. So I'm going to, even though my instinct is to really bring in the bling that's been off to the side in this video and adhere some gems down or some of these great sequins, you know what, let's do it on one. We'll do it on one, and then we'll wrap things up here. But I do have these great, these are from Studio Katya, these blue, there's a blue silver mix that they have that I really like. So we'll use that and have some fun with it. Now, I have to bring in my sad looking Maker Forte jewel pick because I must have gotten a little aggressive and the wax tip came off. So I've been meaning to use my hot glue gun. That'll melt the wax on this and I'll be able to put it back together, but I just haven't had time. So let's get out a few of these gems here. You know what? Why am I doing this? One moment. I should have been bringing in my Studio Katya bead tray. Makes things a lot easier. So let's get those three that I wasn't doing that with into the tray. Okay, so these colors look pretty good with this project. Actually, I'm going to put the clear one back, but let's bring in the white. I really like the white and that darker blue. So let's use those. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to get 5 here. And I think this will work quite nicely. We'll get 2 of the blue. Gonna switch the clear ones around. There we go. So I really like to have an odd number of sequins or whatever type of bling you're using on your card. I learned that from Kathy Zilski, Master of Design, and it just creates an interesting focal point for your eyes and follows along. It just creates a great pattern on your cards. So I think we'll go with that pattern. So I really like this tool because I can use the pokey end to shuffle things out of the way, put my drops of glue down, and then if you've had the experience where you go to put your gem on the glue and it wiggles all around, just let the glue set up for, even 10-15 seconds makes a difference. You can see just in the time that the glue has been sitting there, these will go on so easy and they don't shift all around. It's great. So if that's something that you've had an issue with before, just let the glue set up for a moment and it will just be tacky enough and it will just grab onto your gems right away. So I'm going to pop these back into the container and I think that looks great. So there you go, 3 cards using some ink smooshing and paint splatter techniques. Also using a stencil from My Favorite Things, those great masking stencils that they have with all different shapes. They have square, circle, oval, I think. So really worthwhile checking those out. So I hope everyone is enjoying the great spring weather that we are having. Wishing you all a great day, and thank you for watching. If you have a moment, please take a second to subscribe to the channel. We'd love to have you as a subscriber. You'll be notified when we post new videos to the channel. Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you next time.